I still remember the sound of the gate closing behind me. It didn't just shut. It ended everything. My own parents had thrown me out like a stranger, all because I refused to live by their rules of fake respect. That night, the streetlights blurred through my tears. I kept hearing my mother's voice echoing in my head, "You've ruined our name, Emily."
Ruined? No. I had only refused to be their puppet.
All my life, I believed love came before pride, but in my family, image was the only religion. My sister was their golden child, graceful, adored, flawless, while I was the one they kept hidden in the shadows. And the day I chose my own happiness, they called me a disgrace.
I didn't fight back then. I just walked away with nothing but my truth. But what they didn't know was that truth can't stay buried forever. Because the same town that watched me fall would soon watch them crumble. People used to say the Carter family was perfect. We were the picture everyone in town admired. A big white house, polished smiles, and laughter that sounded rehearsed. To outsiders, we were the respectable Carters. But behind those smiling portraits, I was the one holding my breath, the quiet daughter who never seemed to fit inside their perfect frame. At our dinner table, everything had a rhythm. Father spoke, mother nodded, and my sister Sophia glowed like she owned the room. She was the jewel of the family, beautiful, charming, the one who never made mistakes. I was the other one. The one who didn't belong in designer dresses or expensive conversations. I tried, God, I tried, to make them proud. I studied hard, stayed polite, helped mother with every event. But somehow, my efforts were invisible next to Sophia's perfection. If I got an A, she got an award. If I helped in the kitchen, she was praised for organizing a charity ball. One evening, during a family reunion, Father raised his glass. "To my daughters," he said proudly.
Then, after a long pause that felt like a lifetime, he added, "And especially to Sophia, for keeping our family's name shining."
Everyone clapped.
I smiled too. That's what I was trained to do. But inside, something cracked quietly, like glass under pressure.
Mother often reminded me of my place.
"Emily, don't talk too much when guests are here. You don't want to embarrass yourself." Her words always came wrapped in a soft tone, but they cut deep. I'd nod, pretending not to care, but each time, I felt myself shrinking a little more. Sophia never missed a chance to remind me who the real Carter daughter was. Once, when I borrowed her scarf for a family photo, she whispered, "Try not to look too plain next to me." I laughed it off, but that laugh hid years of quiet humiliation. Our lives revolved around appearances, charity events, Sunday brunches, and the constant need to look flawless. We didn't talk about love, feelings, or dreams.
We talked about reputation, about how the neighbors saw us,
about how perfection kept the world believing our lie. Then Michael came into my life, kind, simple, honest.
He didn't care about status or money. He just saw me. For the first time, I felt visible, alive.
But when I introduced him to my parents, the room went cold.
Mother's smile froze mid-air. Father's jaw tightened. And Sophia's eyes gleamed with amusement.
After he left, Father said, "Emily, people like him don't belong with us." And Mother added softly, "We raised you better than this."
That night, I cried quietly in my room.
Not because they disapproved, but because I realized they never really saw me at all. The next morning, the house looked the same, elegant, peaceful, perfect. But something felt different. Like there was a storm forming under the polished surface. And deep down, I knew, one day, that storm would break. The invitation came embossed in gold, the Carter Foundation annual charity gala. The event my parents lived for, the one that kept our good name shining in the papers.
I was supposed to be proud. But all I felt was dread. Michael had proposed to me the week before.
It wasn't a fancy moment, no grand dinner, no diamonds, just him, under the streetlight, holding a simple ring and trembling as he said, "Emily, you deserve someone who sees you, not someone who uses you." I cried that night, not from sadness, but because it was the first time someone loved me without conditions. When I told my parents, the air turned to ice. Mother's hand froze mid-air, her wine glass trembling.
"You're joking," she said.
"I'm not," I whispered.
I said yes.
Father stood slowly, his voice low but sharp. "You think you can marry beneath this family? A man who works at an auto shop. He's honest, hardworking." "Enough."
His voice echoed across the dining room. You'll end this nonsense. Tonight. But I didn't.
I showed up to the gala wearing Michael's ring, small, modest, real. The hall shimmered with chandeliers and laughter. Everyone wore masks of grace. Sophia floated through the crowd like a queen, her hand clutching a champagne glass. When she saw me, she smiled, that perfect, practiced smile. Still pretending to be one of us, Emily, she murmured.
I didn't answer.
I just walked past her, pretending her words didn't sting. Then, as the speeches began, Father took the stage. He looked proud, composed, the image of respect. Tonight, he said, is about family values, about honor, about the legacy we leave behind. Everyone clapped.
My heart pounded. Then he turned toward me.
But sometimes, family members forget what honor means.
His tone shifted. The crowd went silent.
Sometimes, a daughter brings shame instead of pride. A quiet gasp moved through the hall.
I froze. Was he talking about me? Mother avoided my eyes. Sophia smirked.
Let me make this clear, Father continued. No child of mine will throw away our family's dignity for temporary infatuation.
Laughter rippled through the audience, soft, mocking. My throat tightened.
I wanted to run, to disappear, but my feet wouldn't move. Father, please, I whispered, stepping forward.
He cut me off sharply.
You've embarrassed us enough, Emily.
The cameras flashed. People stared. My world tilted.
Michael, standing near the back, looked at me, his face pale, fists clenched. I could see the pain in his eyes. He took one step toward me, but I shook my head.
I didn't want to give them more to mock.
Sophia leaned in and whispered, You should thank him. At least he humiliated you in style.
Tears blurred my vision.
I turned, pushing through the crowd as whispers followed me like shadows. Outside, the air hit cold and sharp. I pulled off my heels and started walking, away from the golden lights, away from the lies. When I reached the gate, Mother followed. Emily, please don't make a scene, she said softly. It's already bad enough. I turned to her, voice breaking. Bad enough for who, Mom? For your reputation, or for me?
She didn't answer, just lowered her eyes. That night, I packed my things.
No one stopped me.
Not even Sophia.
As the car pulled away, I looked back once at the mansion, bright, silent, lifeless.
That was the night I realized I was no longer part of their family.
But the part they didn't know, the part that would destroy everything, was that they'd made a mistake that night. Because the truth they buried to protect their name was about to be unearthed by me. After the gala, silence became my punishment. No one called, no one texted, not even a single message from my mother. It was as if I had vanished from the family tree. Aunt Margaret was the only one who dared to check on me. She'd show up at my tiny apartment with home-cooked meals and cautious eyes. Your father's pride is his poison, she'd sigh. And your mother, she's too afraid to look weak. I pretended I didn't care. But every night, I scrolled through social media, seeing photos of Sophia smiling beside my parents, her hand on father's arm, the caption reading, Proud family, stronger than ever.
It felt like a knife twisting slowly.
Then one afternoon, a letter arrived at my old address, my parents' mansion. The mailman recognized my name and dropped it off at my new place instead.
It was sealed with the Carter Foundation logo.
Out of curiosity, I opened it. Inside were bank statements, contracts, and a small note. Urgent, missing documents from Robert Carter's account. Please confirm transfer. Transfers? From a charity fund?
My stomach tightened.
It didn't make sense. But it explained Aunt Margaret's uneasy tone the last time she'd visited.
That evening, I called Mother.
For the first time in weeks, she answered. Emily? What is it? I got a letter meant for Dad, from the foundation.
A pause.
Then, you must have opened it by mistake. I didn't. Mom, are you hiding something?
Her tone turned sharp. You've caused enough damage, Emily.
Don't start again.
And then, she hung up. Something inside me shifted that day.
My shame began to turn into something darker, anger. A week later, I saw them at the town's spring festival. Everyone greeted them like royalty. When I approached, Mother stiffened. Father barely looked at me. Sophia smiled sweetly. Oh, you're here, she said loudly, so everyone could hear. I didn't think you'd show your face after the gala. People laughed, soft, cruel laughter. My cheeks burned, but I held my head high. At least I still have a face I'm not afraid to show, I replied quietly. Her smile faltered, but father stepped between us. Enough.
You've embarrassed us in public once.
Don't do it again. He turned away, dismissing me as if I were a child interrupting grown-ups. Every word, every glance, every whisper, they built something heavy inside me. The same family that once taught me to value truth now lived behind lies so thick, they couldn't even breathe honesty anymore.
That night, Aunt Margaret called me in a hushed voice.
Emily, I need to tell you something, she said. Your father's been transferring money from the charity into private accounts. It's bad, very bad. I froze. Does Mom know? She's helping him cover it up.
The world seemed to spin.
The gala, the humiliation, the silence, it all made sense now. They'd turned me into a distraction, a scapegoat, so no one would look too closely at their own sins. Why are you telling me this?
I whispered.
Because, sweetheart, she said sadly, the truth always finds its way out, and when it does, this family will fall apart. After she hung up, I sat in the dark, my hands trembling. I looked at the documents again, the numbers, the signatures. Proof of everything they'd tried to hide.
I didn't sleep that night.
I just stared out the window, watching the lights of the Carter mansion glowing faintly in the distance like a secret that refused to die. And deep inside, a voice whispered, it's time they learned what real shame feels like. Because once the truth comes out, there will be no turning back. I thought I had already felt the deepest kind of pain, the sting of humiliation, the weight of rejection, the cold silence of being forgotten. But I was wrong. What came next was darker, colder, and it shattered the last pieces of my faith in family.
It started with a phone call.
I was at work when my manager, Mr. Lang, pulled me aside. His face was pale, his voice uneasy. Emily, I just got a call from the Carter Foundation. They said there's been an accusation. An accusation?
I frowned. About what? He hesitated.
About funds. Apparently, you took money from your father's company before leaving. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was so absurd it felt unreal.
That's ridiculous.
I didn't take anything.
He looked down, avoiding my eyes. I believe you.
But they've sent statements, documents, signed under your name. The world tilted. My heart started pounding so hard I could barely breathe. Signed under my name. I left work immediately and drove to my parents' house. When I entered, I heard voices, low, calm, rehearsed. The kind that only comes from people who have already decided what story they are going to tell. Father was seated in the living room, sipping his coffee like nothing was wrong. Mother stood by the fireplace, composed as ever. Sophia leaned against the wall, her arms crossed, eyes glittering with triumph. I want to know what's going on, I said, voice shaking. Father didn't even look up. We're doing damage control, he said flatly. Your little stunt with those documents didn't go unnoticed. I didn't do anything. You're the ones hiding money from the foundation. Watch your tone, Mother snapped. You've caused enough trouble already. I stepped closer, tears burning behind my eyes. You made me your scapegoat. You framed me to save yourselves. Sophia let out a soft, mocking laugh. You think anyone would believe you over us? You're the rejected daughter, remember? The one who ran off crying from a gala. Her words hit like poison. I turned to my parents, desperate for even a flicker of doubt in their eyes. But there was none. Just cold agreement. Mother took a deep breath, her tone calm, rehearsed, deadly. Emily, we've decided it's best to make a clean break. We're removing your name from the family trust. You'll receive no inheritance.
It felt like my lungs collapsed.
You're disinheriting me.
Father finally looked at me.
His eyes were hard, empty. Actions have consequences. You chose your path. I stood there, staring at the people who'd raised me, who'd smiled in photographs beside me, who'd once told me I was their pride. Now they were erasing me like I'd never existed. You're protecting your lies, I whispered. You're destroying me to hide what you did.
Father's voice was ice.
You ruined this family long before that.
Something inside me broke.
I screamed. You ruined this family the day you chose your reputation over your daughter. The room went still. For the first time, I saw something flicker in my mother's eyes, not guilt, not love, but fear.
Just for a second. Sophia rolled her eyes.
You should leave before you embarrass yourself more. I stared at her, at all of them, and realized there was no one left on my side. The family that once taught me to hold my head high had now pushed it into the dirt. I left without another word. Outside, the air felt heavy, almost suffocating. I sat in my car for what felt like hours, staring at the gate, the same one that had shut behind me months ago. Only this time, it wasn't just closing me out. It was locking me away from everything I'd ever known. Days passed in a blur. News spread quickly. Neighbors whispered that I had stolen from my parents. Even friends stopped returning my calls. Every door that once opened with warmth now closed in suspicion. Michael tried to console me. We'll fix this, he said, gripping my hands. The truth will come out. But my voice was hollow when I answered, truth doesn't matter when the liars have all the power. For weeks, I felt hollow, like a ghost living among the ruins of her own name.
But even ghosts can burn.
One night, as I was sorting through old boxes, I found those same bank documents again, the ones misdelivered to me. This time, I looked closer. There were digital signatures, dates, and one glaring detail. Sophia's name listed as an account witness.
My heart stopped.
So she wasn't just part of the lie, she helped build it. I sat there in silence, the paper trembling in my hands. And for the first time in months, I didn't cry. Instead, I felt something colder, sharper, a strange calm that came not from peace, but from purpose. They had taken my name, my dignity, my place in the world. But what they didn't realize was that they'd also handed me the weapon that could destroy them. That was the night I stopped being their victim. And in the stillness of that moment, I made myself a promise, one whispered through clenched teeth and a steady heart.
They wanted a disgrace. I'll give them the truth. They thought they'd broken me.
What they didn't know was that breaking only emptied me of their lies, it left space for something sharper. I stopped being the girl who waited for permission to exist.
I became someone who planned in silence.
For days I lived like a shadow, quiet, moving through rooms without being noticed.
But inside, I was rebuilding.
I read every document I had until the ink stopped being words and started being a map.
Bank transfers. Shell companies.
Dates that didn't add up. Signatures that had been forged, and one thread that led straight to Sophia's name as a witness. The more I read, the less ashamed I felt. Shame turned into facts. Facts turned into proof. I called Aunt Margaret and asked her to meet in the park, somewhere public, where secrets felt less dangerous. She arrived with her usual wary smile and a paper bag of biscuits. You look like someone who's planned a small revolution, she joked, but her eyes were grave.
I showed her the files. She didn't blink.
She only said, good. The truth needs a witness. Detective Ryan came next, but not as an officer, as a man who had started to question the Carters long before I ever did. He listened, sharp and careful, turning pages as if they were evidence in a case he'd been waiting to open. This is enough to start an investigation, he said quietly. But if you want them exposed publicly, you'll need more corroboration, timelines, paper trails they can't erase.
So I built layers.
I traced payments to Shell accounts, matched invoices with charity events they'd staged, saved email chains where mother and father discussed contingencies and messaging. I recorded conversations where Sophia casually mentioned documents and signatures, offhand phrases that, once stitched together, became a confession in slow motion.
I learned to be patient. I learned to be clever.
At night, Michael sat with me, holding my hand while I sorted through evidence. You don't have to do this alone, he said.
We can go to the press.
We can. No, I interrupted, steady now. If this is to matter, it has to be undeniable. If we rush, they'll bury it. If we make noise without the proof, they'll make me the liar again. I built a plan that felt like walking a tightrope. Legal counsel to verify documents, a trusted journalist to time the reveal, Detective Ryan to ensure the investigation moved when the town's attention focused on the banquet my parents so loved to host. My idea was surgical. Expose them where they love to be seen, under the chandeliers and cameras, with every neighbor watching. Public truth for public lies. But revenge, I learned, is not a roar. It's a careful, steady burn that eats through facades until there's nothing left to hide. I rehearsed what I would say until the words didn't tremble. I imagined faces, Mother's composed mask cracking, Sophia's smirk falling away, and I felt no joy in the ruin. Only relief. Only the strange, burning peace of someone who finally had the tools to demand justice for herself.
There were nights I doubted. There were moments I wanted to give up the pain for the comfort of forgetting.
But every time I touched the papers, every time Detective Ryan confirmed a new thread, my resolve tightened.
I was no longer seeking punishment.
I was seeking truth, and through it, respect, for myself and for the people they'd lied to. The banquet was chosen, their favorite stage, their perfect audience. I had my evidence, my witnesses, and a plan that left no room for their rehearsed lies. I stood before the mirror that night and put on the dress they once sneered at, the same dress Sophia said was not good enough. I smoothed my hair, steadied my breath, and whispered to the woman staring back. This is for the truth. Outside, the town lights flickered like 1,000 small eyes. Inside me, something cold and certain settled. I had crossed the line from hurt to action. Tomorrow night, under their chandeliers, I would either destroy them, or be destroyed. The night of the banquet arrived wrapped in glitter and lies. The Carter mansion glowed brighter than ever, a palace built on pretense. Every chandelier sparkled, every guest smiled, every whispered rumor drowned under polite laughter. And there I was, standing just beyond the golden doors, clutching a small silver drive in my hand. The truth. My truth. Their shame. Inside, the air was thick with perfume and arrogance. My parents stood on stage, basking in admiration. Mother shimmered in emerald silk, father's voice carried confidence, and Sophia, she sparkled like a jewel polished by deceit. When they noticed me enter, the room stilled. A ripple of discomfort passed through the crowd. I could almost hear the whispers. She came back. Isn't she the one who? Yes. I was the scandal they'd erased. But tonight, I was a storm they couldn't stop. Father cleared his throat. Good evening, everyone. Tonight, we celebrate generosity, integrity, and family. He smiled. And that was my cue. I stepped forward. Family, I said, loud enough for the microphone to catch. What a beautiful word, isn't it? Especially when it's built on lies. The room froze. My mother's smile cracked. Sophia's eyes narrowed. Emily, Mother hissed, her voice low. This isn't the time. Oh, it's exactly the time, I said, steady and cold. You wanted a show. Let's give them one. I turned toward the big screen behind the stage and nodded to the technician, a kind man who owed me no favor, just the truth. The projector flickered to life. The crowd gasped as documents appeared. Bank statements, transaction records, the proof of everything. Transfers from the Carter Foundation to private accounts. Signatures. Emails. Sophia's name stamped beside every false witness. Father stepped forward, his voice rising. This is nonsense. Fabricated. Fabricated. I repeated. Then explain why your foundation's charity funds ended up in offshore accounts under your name. Gasps rippled across the hall. Cameras flashed. Someone muttered, "Is this real?" Mother's voice broke, trembling with anger. Emily, stop this right now. I turned to her, tears in my eyes. I begged you once to listen. You turned me into the family disgrace so no one would look too closely at what you were hiding. Sophia lunged forward, panic cracking through her poise. You think anyone believes you? You're bitter, jealous. I cut her off, pointing at the screen. That's your signature, Sophia. The witness line. You helped forge those transfers. Her face went pale. I didn't. But the murmurs around us grew into a roar. Guests began filming. The press reporters, who'd come to photograph another Carter success, were now capturing their downfall. Father's composure shattered. You'll regret this, Emily, he shouted. I met his fury with calm. I already did, once. Never again. Detective Ryan stepped from the crowd then, flashing his badge. Robert and Linda Carter, you're under investigation for embezzlement and fraud. The room erupted. My mother stumbled back, clutching her pearls. Sophia whispered something to father, but he was already too lost, red-faced, defeated. The man who had humiliated me in front of the town now stood humiliated himself, his voice drowned beneath the sound of truth. I stood still, shaking but unbroken. My heart pounded in my chest, not with fear, but release.
Mother looked at me with tears streaming down her face.
Emily, you've destroyed us. I stepped closer and whispered, No, Mother.
You destroyed yourselves.
I just stopped protecting your secret.
The flash of cameras lit the hall like lightning.
The guests stared in disbelief as the Carters, the perfect, untouchable family, crumbled before their eyes. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel ashamed. I felt free.
The applause didn't come immediately.
It came slowly, from the corners of the room, a few claps, then more, until the hall echoed with it.
Not for revenge. For truth.
I looked at the broken faces of the people who had once made me feel invisible and said softly, almost to myself,
You taught me that reputation is everything. But tonight, I learned that truth is stronger.
Then I turned and walked away from the stage, calm, steady, and finally untouchable. Behind me, the family that once silenced me stood exposed before the world. When the lights dimmed and the crowd dispersed, silence filled the hall like the aftermath of a hurricane. The once glittering Carter name lay in ruins, not because I wanted revenge, but because the truth had finally done what it always does. It surfaced.
I walked out of that banquet hall without looking back.
Behind me, I could still hear reporters' voices, camera flashes, and my mother's faint sobs.
But I didn't turn around.
For years, I had begged them to see me, to hear me.
Tonight, they had, but not in the way they imagined.
Outside, the air was cool, sharp, cleansing. Michael waited by the gate. When he saw me, he didn't ask what happened. He already knew. He simply took my hand and whispered, You did what they never could. You told the truth. We drove away in silence, passing through streets where my name had once been whispered with pity. This time, people didn't look at me like I was a disgrace. They looked at me like someone who had survived. In the days that followed, the Carter scandal consumed the town. The foundation collapsed. My parents resigned in shame. Sophia vanished from social media, her polished image erased by exposure. Aunt Margaret visited me one afternoon and said, It's over now, Emily. You've done what had to be done.
But I didn't celebrate.
Justice doesn't taste sweet, it tastes clean, like air after a storm.
I didn't want their downfall. I wanted my peace.
Sometimes, late at night, I'd think about my mother's last words, You've destroyed us. And I'd whisper to the darkness, No, Mom. I set myself free. One morning, I stood outside the mansion's iron gates, the same gates that had closed on me when they disowned me. They were quiet now, rusted at the edges, their golden shine fading.
I didn't feel anger anymore. Just distance. Just peace.
Inside, I could hear the faint echo of my father's voice from memory. Family is everything, Emily.
He was right, but not in the way he thought. Family isn't built on fear or lies. It's built on respect.
And without respect, blood means nothing. Before leaving, I slipped a letter into the gate, not for apology, but closure.
It said only one line.
I still wish you peace, but I'll never trade my dignity for your silence again. Then I walked away, lighter than I'd ever felt. Weeks later, I restarted my life, a small home, a job I loved, mornings filled with real laughter. No cameras, no expectations, no masks. Just me. I finally understood that dignity isn't something others can give or take, it's something you reclaim when you stop apologizing for who you are.